My parents drained the $180,000 I'd spent years saving for a house. My mom actually laughed and said, "Thanks for funding your brother's future." I just sat there, smiling to myself. They had no idea they'd just walked straight into the trap I'd been setting for months. I, 32M, sat across from my parents in their living room, watching my mother's face light up with that particular brand of smugness I'd become intimately familiar with over the past decade. She'd just informed me that the $180,000 in my savings account was gone, transferred out 3 days ago, and her exact words about funding my brother's future were still echoing in my ears. My father sat beside her, not quite meeting my eyes, but not looking apologetic either. Just resigned, like this was always how things were supposed to go. I didn't yell, didn't stand up, or make a scene. I just smiled and told them I understood. The confusion that flickered across my mother's face was delicious. Let me back up 6 months. That's when I first suspected something was wrong. I'd been saving aggressively since I was 24, living in a cramped studio apartment despite making decent money as a software engineer, driving a 15-year-old sedan, cooking every meal at home. My goal was simple: save enough for a substantial down payment on a house before I turned 35. I was ahead of schedule. My parents had always asked for small amounts here and there. A few hundred for car repairs, $1,000 for property tax, $2,000 when my brother needed help with college tuition. I gave willingly because family helps family, or so I'd been taught. But 6 months ago, I noticed something odd. My mother asked me to update my savings account information for them, claiming they wanted to gift me some money for my birthday. She said their bank required my account details to process the transfer. I'm not an idiot, but I am trusting when it comes to family. I gave her the information. 2 weeks later, I checked my account during lunch and saw a withdrawal of $500. I called my mother immediately, asking what was going on. She told me my brother had an emergency, needed money for car repairs, and she knew I wouldn't mind helping out. She'd pay me back next month. Next month came. No repayment. When I asked, she got defensive, told me I was being greedy, that family doesn't keep score. My father backed her up, said I made good money and should be happy to help my younger brother get on his feet. That's when I knew. They didn't see it as borrowing. They saw my account as a family resource they could tap whenever they wanted. I started documenting everything. Every withdrawal, every conversation, every promise to pay me back. I also did something else. I opened a new savings account at a different bank and began funneling my paychecks there. The old account, the one my parents had access to, I left active but stopped adding to it. I even added a bit of money each month to make it look like I was still saving normally. Then I waited. Over the next few months, the withdrawals increased. First $1,000, then $2,500, then $5,000 at a time. My mother stopped making excuses. She'd just tell me after the fact that the money was needed for my brother's apartment deposit, or his certification courses, or his new business venture. My brother, 26 and perfectly capable of working, apparently needed $180,000 to get his life together. I played the part perfectly. I expressed frustration but never cut them off. I complained but always backed down when my mother accused me of being selfish. I let them think I was a pushover, someone who'd eventually just accept this as normal. Meanwhile, I was building my case. I contacted a lawyer 4 months ago, showed him everything. The bank statements, the text messages, the fact that they'd gained access to my account under false pretenses, the pattern of unauthorized withdrawals. He told me I had options, but I needed to be patient and let them finish what they were doing. So I did. 3 days ago, the account hit zero. They'd taken everything, and apparently decided it was time to come clean about their intentions. Hence the family meeting where my mother laughed and told me I'd funded my brother's future. I asked them what exactly the money went toward. My mother explained, practically glowing with pride, that my brother was buying a house. A starter home in a nice neighborhood, $200,000 purchase price. They'd contributed $20,000 of their own savings, and my $180,000 covered the rest. He was closing on the property next week. I asked if my brother knew where the money came from. My father shifted uncomfortably, but my mother jumped in, saying of course he knew, and he was grateful, and I should be happy for him, because this is what good families do. I nodded slowly and told them I needed some time to process this. My mother actually hugged me on the way out, told me she knew I'd understand eventually, that I'd see this was for the best. I went home and called my lawyer. The next morning, I filed a police report for theft and fraud. The paper trail was immaculate. I had never authorized those withdrawals, never signed anything giving them access to my account, and the initial access was obtained through deception. My lawyer explained that even family members can't just help themselves to your money, and the amounts involved made this a serious crime. I also filed a civil lawsuit for the full amount plus damages. My parents received notice of both actions 2 days later. My phone exploded. 17 missed calls from my mother, 12 from my father, 8 from my brother. I listened to exactly one voicemail. My mother, screaming that I was destroying the family, that I was being vindictive and cruel, that they'd raised me better than this. I didn't respond. My lawyer reached out to their lawyer. The message was simple: return the full $180,000 within 14 days, or we proceed with both criminal and civil action. My parents called me directly, got my voicemail, and left a message saying they didn't have the money anymore. It was in the house, and they couldn't just undo the purchase. That wasn't my problem. Day 3 after the lawsuit was filed, my brother called from a number I didn't recognize. I answered. He asked me what the hell I was doing, told me I was going to ruin his life, that he'd already signed the papers and moved into his new house. I asked him if he knew the money was taken without my permission. Silence. Then he said he'd assumed I'd agreed to it, that this was a family investment. I told him he had 2 weeks to figure out how to return my money, then hung up. My parents tried a different approach. They showed up at my apartment on day 5. I didn't let them in. Through the door, my father tried the guilt trip, talking about all the sacrifices they'd made raising me, how they'd paid for my education, given me a place to live growing up. I reminded him that raising your child isn't a loan, it's a legal obligation, and none of that entitled them to steal from me as an adult. My mother started crying, saying I'd changed, that I wasn't the son she raised. I told her she was right. I wasn't the doormat she'd been training me to be. Day 8, I received a call from my lawyer. My parents' attorney had reached out with a settlement offer. They'd return $100,000 immediately if I dropped the criminal charges and settled the civil suit. I told my lawyer to counter $180,000 plus $20,000 in damages and legal fees, or we go to trial. Day 10, my brother called again. He was panicking now. He'd talked to a real estate attorney and learned that if the money was obtained illegally, there could be a lien placed on his property. He might lose the house entirely. He asked me, practically begging, what he was supposed to do. I told him that wasn't my concern. He made a choice to accept a massive financial gift without verifying where it came from. That was on him. Day 12, my parents agreed to the full settlement. They'd taken out a home equity loan against their own house and were borrowing the rest from my father's brother. The money would be transferred within 48 hours. I sat in my actual savings account and looked at the balance, $240,000. The account they drained was a decoy I'd been feeding just enough to keep it looking legitimate. Every real dollar I'd earned over the past 6 months had gone into the new account they didn't know existed. The $200,000 came through on day 14, exactly as agreed. I verified the amount, signed the settlement agreement, and the case was closed. Then I did something my parents weren't expecting. I sent my brother an invoice for $180,000. Legally, he'd been what's called an unjustly enriched party. He'd benefited from stolen money, and regardless of whether he knew it was stolen, he was obligated to return it. My parents had paid me back, but I wanted him to understand there were consequences. He called me, furious, saying I'd already gotten my money back, so this was just me being vindictive. I told him he was exactly right, and if he didn't want to pay me, he could take it up with his parents who'd put him in this position. I wasn't actually going to pursue collection, but I wanted him to feel the same panic I'd felt watching my savings disappear. Update 1. It's been 3 weeks since the settlement, and the fallout has been exactly what I expected and somehow worse. My parents aren't speaking to me. My mother sent one final email, a long rambling message about how I'd broken her heart, destroyed the family, and she'd never forgive me for prioritizing money over blood. She ended it by saying she hoped I was happy living alone with my precious savings. I deleted it without responding. My brother has been more persistent. He's sent multiple messages alternating between rage and attempts at reconciliation. One day he's calling me a psychopath who'd destroy his own family over money. The next he's asking if we can meet for coffee to talk things through. I haven't responded to any of it. What he doesn't know, what none of them know, is that I recorded several of our conversations. Not the phone calls, but the in-person visits. My apartment has a video doorbell and security cameras. Every time my parents showed up and made their various arguments, I had it on tape. My mother explicitly admitting they took the money without asking. My father saying I should just accept it and move on because family is more important than money. My lawyer has all of it stored securely, just in case they try to rewrite history or come after me again somehow. The extended family has been predictably divided. My father's brother, the one who loaned them part of the money to pay me back, called me last week. He didn't take sides exactly, but he said he understood why I did what I did. He'd always known my mother favored my brother, and he'd watched her make excuses for him his entire life. He told me that when he agreed to loan them the money, he made it clear he expected full repayment with interest, and if they defaulted, he'd be pursuing his own legal action. Apparently, financial consequences run in the family, just not the branch I grew up in. My mother's sister reached out too, but her message was different. She called me selfish and greedy, said that my parents had made a mistake, but I'd blown it completely out of proportion. She reminded me that my brother was struggling and needed help, and I should have been grateful to be in a position to provide it. I blocked her number. The interesting part came from an unexpected source. My brother's girlfriend, someone I'd met maybe 3 times, sent me a message through social media. She said she needed to talk to me about something important, but didn't want to do it over text. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop. She showed up looking exhausted. She told me she'd been fighting with my brother constantly since this whole situation exploded. She'd had no idea the money came from me, or that it was taken without permission. My brother had told her it was a family gift, that everyone was on board with helping him buy his first house. When the lawsuit happened and everything came out, she started asking questions. My brother got defensive, said it was complicated, that I was overreacting. But she pushed, and eventually he admitted that he'd known the money was being taken from my account, and while he didn't explicitly know I hadn't authorized it, he'd suspected something was wrong when the amounts kept increasing and I kept complaining to our parents about it. She told me she was planning to leave him, not just because of the money situation, but because of what it revealed about his character. He'd been willing to accept a massive financial benefit while knowing his brother was upset about it, had never questioned whether it was right or wrong, and then had the nerve to act like he was the victim when consequences arrived. I didn't know what to say to her. I eventually told her I appreciated her reaching out, but whatever she decided about her relationship was her choice to make. She nodded, finished her coffee, and left. 2 days later, my brother sent me a message saying his girlfriend had moved out, and it was all my fault for poisoning her against him. I finally responded to that one. I told him that his girlfriend left because she saw who he really was, and I had nothing to do with it. I also told him that if he contacted me again, I'd be filing for a restraining order. He hasn't messaged since. The house he bought is apparently becoming a problem too. Without the financial support he was expecting from our parents, and now with his girlfriend gone and her income no longer contributing to household expenses, he's struggling to make the mortgage payments. I heard through the family grapevine that he's already looking at refinancing or possibly selling. Part of me feels bad about that. A small part. The part that remembers we used to be close when we were kids, before my parents' favoritism drove a wedge between us. But mostly I feel nothing. He made his choices, just like our parents made theirs. Update 2. 5 weeks post-settlement, and things have escalated in a way I genuinely didn't anticipate. My parents declared bankruptcy. I found out through my uncle, my father's brother. He called me sounding tired and frustrated, told me that my parents had defaulted on the loan he gave them to pay me back. When he started pursuing repayment, they hit him with bankruptcy papers. Apparently, between their home equity loan, the personal loan from my uncle, and their existing debts, they'd completely over-leveraged themselves. The bankruptcy filing listed me as a creditor because of the legal fees I'd included in the settlement, which had technically been a debt they owed. My uncle was listed too, for the $80,000 he'd loaned them. My uncle wasn't getting his money back. The bankruptcy would discharge most of their debts, and he'd be lucky to see 10 cents on the dollar. He told me he'd tried to help them avoid this, offered them a payment plan with minimal interest, but my mother had refused. She'd told him she'd rather lose everything than continue being punished for helping her younger son. I asked if they were losing their house. He said probably not. Homestead exemptions would protect their primary residence up to a certain value, and their house fell just under that threshold. But their credit was destroyed, and they'd be dealing with the consequences for years. I realized something then. My mother had always been bad with money. She'd always spent impulsively, made decisions based on emotion rather than logic, enabled my brother's poor choices because she couldn't stand to see him struggle. My father had always been passive, going along with whatever she wanted to avoid conflict. They'd raised my brother to be just like them, and they'd tried to raise me the same way, but something hadn't taken. Maybe it was watching them stress over bills every month despite having decent incomes. Maybe it was seeing my brother get everything handed to him and still fail. Whatever it was, I'd learned early that money meant security, and security meant not depending on anyone else. That lesson had just been reinforced in the hardest way possible. My brother's house situation resolved itself in the worst possible way. He couldn't make the mortgage payments, couldn't find a refinancing option that worked with his income and credit, and couldn't sell quickly enough to avoid foreclosure. The bank took the house. He moved back in with our parents. 3 adults in a 3-bedroom house. All of them blaming me for their collective situation. All of them broke or close to it. I bought my house last week. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, nice yard, good neighborhood. I paid $320,000, put down $160,000, and got a great interest rate because my credit is spotless. My mortgage payment is less than what I was paying in rent. I didn't tell anyone in my family, but word got out somehow, probably through social media or a mutual acquaintance. My mother sent me one last message. No email this time, just a text. She told me I was dead to her, that she'd raised a monster, that she hoped my big house would keep me warm at night since I'd chosen it over my family. I blocked her number and deleted the message. My father tried a different approach. He sent a short email, just a few lines, saying he was sorry things had turned out this way, that he wished we could find a path to reconciliation, that he missed his son. I almost responded to that one. Almost told him that if he'd missed having a son, maybe he shouldn't have enabled his wife's theft from that son. Almost told him that passive complicity is still complicity. But I didn't. I just archived the email and moved on. I'm sitting in my new house now, writing this final update. The place still smells like paint and new carpet. I've got a long list of projects to tackle, furniture to buy, a life to build. People have asked me if I feel guilty, if I think I went too far, destroyed my family over money. The truth is, I didn't destroy my family over money. My family destroyed itself by treating me like a resource instead of a person. The money was just the catalyst that made everything visible. I spent years being the responsible one, the reliable one, the one who had his act together. And instead of being proud of that, instead of respecting the discipline and sacrifice it took to build what I built, they saw it as something they were entitled to take. My mother laughed when she told me she'd drained my account. Laughed. Like it was funny that I'd worked myself to exhaustion for 8 years just to fund my brother's dreams instead of my own. That laugh is what I think about when people ask if I have regrets. I don't. I saved for years, lived below my means, made sacrifices. Also, I could have security and stability. They tried to take that from me, and when they succeeded, they expected me to smile and accept it. Instead, I took it back, with interest. My family is broken, but it was broken long before I filed that lawsuit. I just stopped pretending otherwise. And now I'm sitting in my house, the one I saved for and bought with my own money, and I'm finally at peace. They thought they'd won when they emptied that account. They thought I'd just roll over and accept my role as the family ATM. They had no idea they'd walked into a trap I'd been setting for months. No idea that every dollar they stole from that account was being matched in another one they couldn't touch. No idea that I was documenting everything, building a case, waiting for them to take enough rope to hang themselves. My mother's laugh still echoes sometimes. But now when I hear it, I smile too. Because I won.